Alrighty. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me? Thank God, because our previous episode, the audio is completely fried. So an hour and 10 minutes of a beautiful, in-depth prescription of week one NFL football was completely toast. And so I'm going to have to do a little quick breakdown for you guys of what we covered, me and Hunter, before we get moving with the Stats and Scars episode of week one, which is covering injury and statistical analysis. Super excited to have the medical guy and the analyst back in the studio for this short little episode that we're going to release every Thursday at 8 a.m. before the weekend slate. That way you guys are ahead of the action. So to get started, here's what we covered in this past episode. We for our Shatter the Script subject, we wanted to talk about the wide receiver contracts. And this included people like CeeDee Lamb getting 4 years, $136 million. Brandon Ayuk getting $30 million per year. You know, Jamar Chase sitting out of practice. And so we basically kind of shattered the script on, was those receivers worth the money? We believe that Brandon Ayuk's market was exactly what I projected on X, that he is not that he's in that gray area of the category of receivers where he doesn't really belong with the top tier ones, but he's in that Keenan Allen group to where 30 million is perfectly fine for him every year. And with Debo running shitty routes like he's been, he belongs in San Francisco to stay. And then CeeDee Lamb worth every penny, long story short. And we'll see what they do with the next contract, whether they pay Dak Prescott. That's a mystery to be unsolved until Jerry Jones makes his white privilege decision. And then Jamar Chase, he's going to play. I think he's going to play. You just need to remain calm, and he'll get paid. I know you fantasy owners are freaking out right now. Okay. So that was our Shatter the Script subject. And then we wanted to do a little bit of week one preview. We selected 6 games, starting with the Ravens and Chiefs. We made some quick little projections. I'm just going to go through who we picked and move forward. Ravens and Chiefs, Thursday night football. Me and Hunter both took Baltimore to win this game. The Chiefs normally have a very slow start. The Packers and Eagles, the gang war in Brazil. Don't wear green. 2 greens team playing Brazil. Me and Hunter both picked Green Bay, ironically. We just don't think the Eagles had the firepower. They do have the firepower, but I don't think Kellen Moore's offense competes with LaFleur's. Cowboys and Browns. Me and Hunter are both taking Cleveland. We're kind of going match for match here. We had kind of the same principal ideas. I was hoping to kind of diversify, but Dallas is very inconsistent outside of the New York Giants week one when they play. So they'll probably be walking out there with some scrubs and look like crap and win the division. Jaguars and Dolphins. Hunter takes Jacksonville. I take Miami for our separate reasons. Hunter thinks Trevor Lawrence gets to a fast start. I think Tua and the firepower, if everybody shows up healthy, that firepower and that speed kills. Rams and Lions, the rematch of last year's playoff game. This is our Sunday night football matchup. Me and Hunter are both taking the Rams in this game. We think Stafford comes out flying with Puka and Cooper Kupp fully healthy back in the saddle. We do think the Lions are a better football team, but the Rams, I think, run away with this one with a very slim margined victory. And then our Monday night football game on ESPN with Joe Buck is Hunter is picking, this is the Jets and the 49ers. Hunter is picking the Jets. I'm picking the San Francisco 49ers. I don't think the Jets really start rolling. Rodgers hasn't been on the field in a full year. I just think they get to a slow start. The 49ers are kind of ready to go. Most of their guys have been in practice. They're getting Christian McCaffrey back. I think they're going to do a great job. The one thing on my prediction, taking the 49ers, is that pass rush. The 49ers O-line has taken a hit. Trent Williams is taking a fine every day before he's paid. He might have been paid before I even started this episode. But to this day, that O-line needs some protection. And then I took some college football picks real quick. This is kind of an everyday thing. I'm going to pick my top 3 matchups ahead of the week. I'm going to run through it. We're probably going to go a little bit into depth at the end of this episode about it. But I took UT at Michigan. The spread was 6.5. I believe it might have changed by now, but I'm taking University of Texas in a low-scoring ball game. But I think they easily win this ball game. I think they're way ahead of the sticks of Michigan currently. Arkansas and Oklahoma State. I think this is going to be a very close game, but Ollie Gordon takes Oklahoma State to the top. And this one covering the spread of 3.5, favoring Oklahoma State. And last but not least, the Battle of Iowa. This is the children of the corn type battle. You know what I'm talking about? So Iowa State at Iowa. I'm taking the defense of the Iowa Hawkeyes in this game. Iowa State, kind of a lower tiered team coming into Iowa, who is a top 25 team, I believe, at the moment. I think Iowa takes that game with ease. And last but not least, the kids' picks. We're coming up with a name with it at some point. But this is his stardom sit-em. He's taking over fantasy football this year. This is his start-em, sit-em lineups. The sit-ems he kind of did by your fantasy lineups. So quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, tight end, and so forth. All right. On the sit list, number 1, quarterback, Dak Prescott, Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb's been at camp. He thinks he's going to struggle week 1. Running back 1, James Conner for Arizona. Sit him versus Buffalo. Running back 2, we got, this looks like, DeAndre Swift versus Tennessee. I'm kind of reading handwriting here. DeAndre Swift versus Tennessee. He thinks that defensive interior for Tennessee is going to be a huge problem for DeAndre Swift. CeeDee Lamb. Hear him out. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver, sit him. Week 1 against the Browns. That pass rush is going to be going crazy against Dallas, most likely, because you can take him on that left tackle. Sure, he can hold his weight. Guyton's pretty good. Move him over to Terrence Steele, then see what happens. Who's laughing now? Devontae Adams, sit versus the Chargers. Kelsey, sit versus Baltimore, week 1. These are some big names, but yeah, I guess you got to trust the kid. David Montgomery as a flex, sit versus the Rams. He doesn't know how much, he's not very confident in this one, but Jahmyr Gibbs should be able to play, but he's been kind of shaky with a hamstring injury. He's got him on the sit list. And then the Lions defense, you're sitting versus the Rams as well. He thinks, because he's believing that the Rams are going to win just as I do. And on his start list, to wrap this thing up, Joe Burrow versus New England, definitely a start. Very poor defense, new coach. Joe Shiesty's going to come in there and throw the ball across the yard. Josh Jacobs versus the Eagles on Friday night. Thinks he's going to have a fantastic game. A.J. Dillon going down with the injury. He's going to be taking over a lot of the load. Pause. Aaron Jones versus the Giants. Big game here. He thinks he comes out firing. 29-year-old vet. He's going to have a ball. Chris Olave with the Saints versus Carolina. That kind of a weak secondary over there. He's going to have Olave going off with a lot of targets for the rest of the year. So expect him to be in a lot of stardom lineups. And then you got Malik Neighbors versus Minnesota coming out strong. Kind of a flip-flop action there with Aaron Jones and Malik Neighbors. Start Malik Neighbors. Dalton Kincaid with Buffalo, the tight end, versus Arizona. James Cook, who he projects to be this year's Alvin Kamara type fantasy player, versus Arizona as well. And start the Buccaneers defense versus Washington. He thinks that defense gets after Jaden Daniels. And that wraps up our week 1 preview. I've apologized that it wasn't in the full hour segment that we have, but that is it in a nutshell. And that won't happen again. So we apologize about that. But this episode is for Stats and Scars. So I appreciate that little short 8-minute preview. This is our Stats and Scars injury and stat analysis with the medical guy and the analyst, who I'm going to bring in now to join in and go through this real quick episode to get y'all up to speed. And welcome back, the analyst and the medical guide, to the Shatter the Script podcast. Great to have y'all back. This episode is meant to get you guys ahead of the storm before the weekend slate. That way you have your weekly injury updates, some video breakdown in case you want a better idea of some primary skilled position player or quarterback that suffered an injury. We did a lot of this last year, and get some advanced statistical analysis on who might get the edge at certain positions with some film breakdown, some analysis from the advanced statistics. There's only a couple words you can use for that, but the analyst is on top of that. He's a ball knower, as you could say. But yeah, welcome to the show, guys. I appreciate y'all being here. How is everything, Jacob, medical guy? How is everything down there?
Man, it's great. Just football, back in the swing of things. Super busy. Do kind of have a bone to pick with you about picking Oklahoma State over Arkansas, but it's whatever. It's whatever, dude. But yeah, it's going good. How about you, Ryan?
Everything's good. I'm just glad football is back in the swing of things. Been paying a little bit of attention to baseball. The Astros are in full swing. The Rangers suck. That's awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Number 2, to add to Jared, Trent Williams hasn't signed his contract yet. Just throwing that out there. And number 3, other than the Olympics being on my TV, I'm just glad, like I said, that I can come home and actually turn on a ball game of some sorts most nights. So football is
anybody-
back. Fantasy football's back. We're all ready to go. Sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
Oh, you're good. I thought, sorry. Did anybody move from their couch on Saturday, right? I know you were elsewhere, but I did not move from my couch on Saturday. I just had a full rack of beer, some pizza, and I pigged out. And I like what Big Cat said from Barstool. And he is, there is no dieting on game days. That's
Absolutely.
not a thing. So, I mean, every Sunday it's tradition to get the cheapest pizza you can find and grab some beer and lock in for your fantasy matchups. So you might find us plastered on a Shatter the Script episode. But yeah, I appreciate you guys joining in here. Let's get started with injuries first. Why don't we do that and give a quick little breakdown about what you've heard, what you've seen, whether on X, and maybe give us some weekly updates and a who's in, who's out, and we'll chime in between. That way we can discuss things if we want to. But I'll leave it up to you, Meadow Guy, and we'll be here for backup in case you get stumbled.
There we go. Absolutely. Well, this one's gonna be pretty quick and whatnot. Beginning of the season, everything. I do want to say one thing about like the injury or the injured list, like when they post it on NFL or ESPN. Right now, if anybody has anything that even feels a little bit abnormal, they're gonna write it down. And they're not going to make people practice, right?
Yeah,
like, you know, you're gonna sit there and see like, oh, somebody has, you know, calf soreness or back tightness or whatever, and they're going to hold them out, and it's going to be like a questionable mark. So don't let that worry you too much when you're drafting people in fantasy. If you go and check, a lot of them be like, going to be good to go on week 1. So don't let that worry you. But the few I have, just because I've seen a lot of people take these guys in fantasy, and we were talking about it a little bit before, you know, like TJ Hawkinson, you know, tore his ACL in like week 16 or something last year, right before they got to the playoffs. And seen a lot of people draft him, and just looking at ACL recoveries, I mean, the you know, academia and studies show that like ACLs, when they're returned before 9-month return period, there's like a 65% chance of re-tear rate or re-injure rate. So just watch out that way, you know, you don't end up trying to start this guy or, you know, putting a lot of your tight end position on TJ Hawkinson when he's probably not going to be back until close to a year after his surgery date. Same with Nick Chubb. I mean, obviously he's had the injury before. We see the videos and whatnot of him squatting 7,000 pounds even after, you know, he's had the surgery. But just take account of that, like squatting and then playing football are two totally different things. Yes, they are related, but as all of us can know, it's like we've seen plenty of guys that could lift the gym and not be very good, or see guys that could crush a 30-pack and 2 a.m. Taco Bell and then go throw the best game of their life. And
Johnny
not everything is strictly related to how much you can lift. And we all saw the video of that injury. And so your knees are not supposed to bend that way. And so it may, seeing as that is his second time to have that type of injury, you know, just be weary of having him. And I know he's on the PUP list, which means he can't come back until at least after week 4. But I'm thinking after the second time having that injury, it's at least week 10, week 11.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely gonna wait and make sure he's healthy, especially as much as he's important and vital to their entire offense. I mean, they're gonna wait, especially if they're winning games. They're gonna wait until he's healthy, and I think that's the same for TJ. Anyway, go ahead. I was just throwing in some input there.
Yeah,
perfect.
The one thing I'll say real quick is that the Cleveland Browns are going to rely heavily on their defense, a lot like last year, and have Jerome Ford carry the workload, most likely. So,
absolutely. And it brings up another guy that a lot of people have picked, and it's been Jalen Brooks from Carolina, the running back that was from University of Texas. I mean, he had an ACL injury, you know, what was it, about halfway through his collegiate season this past year, and same thing. So. You're not going to want to rush that back, and him being a position that requires a lot of workload, like you just got to be careful with that, because you'd rather not. I mean, we saw the perfect example I always use is Adrian Peterson, right? He had that meniscus injury. He came back and he had meniscus and ACL, I believe, and came back in like 5.5 months. And yes, he had that one good season. And then if you look at his seasons from then on, you see an extreme dive in like, performance. And so it's just one of those where like, be prepared for them not to play until at least halfway through the season. And then another one that pops up is Marquise Brown, wide receiver for the Cardinals, Hollywood Brown. And so he had a little shoulder injury, little AC joint sprain. Usually those tend to be pretty easy to come back from. However, I know Ryan, probably being a lineman, he's probably had it, happen multiple times, or even playing linebacker in high school, or one of the 11 positions I know you played in high school. Yes, it can be easy to manage until you get hit by somebody in it, and then it's like, holy shit, it's back to square one. And it's like, I can't lift my arm. And so him being kind of that 1A, 1B receiver over there, it's another thing. Just be patient with it. I would see him making like a week 2, week 3 return. And then the last one, and I've talked about this injury before plenty of times, with Christian McCaffrey, right? He had the calf injury. Calf injuries are never as simple as it seems, and especially for a running back position, a high twitch guy, someone who does a lot for that offense. They're not as simple as they seem. And in the athletic training world, usually when we have a calf strain or an Achilles injury that's more than just tendonitis or tightness or stuff, you usually say like, hey, you've completed your rehab, you're good to go. Now let's give it another week and a half, 2 weeks, because you're never going to play or do practice or do rehab at the same intensity you're going to do a game at. And so those are one things you want to make absolutely sure of. Perfect example was Joe Burrow last year, right?
Yeah,
had it in the beginning of training camp, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's going to be a 4-week thing. Then all of a sudden he's in week 6 still having a calf sleeve during games. And so just be wary of that as well. And, if you wanted to pick, your little dark horse running back up for Christian McCaffrey, I know last year was one of the first seasons he's been fully healthy all year in a while. And, the saying is, hurt guys stay hurt. And so it's just one of those things. I hope it doesn't happen for him, but it's just something to kind of, stash somebody on the end of your bench chart and stuff like that. And then last but not least, I saw that Damar Hamlin popped up on there, for a hamstring injury. So yeah, just make sure if you're picking him up many of your leagues, just kind of pay attention to that.
If your fantasy team has a defensive player and you have Damar Hamlin, I have some serious prayers going out to you.
I knew how he was your second favorite player, Jared. So, I just had to remind you.
His jersey, I have a mini jersey of his. It's about yay big, and it sits on my mirror every morning when I wake up. And I say to myself, count your days, and you're far more lucky than those who have fallen on the football field. But happy he's okay. It's always fun to joke after the fact that someone's okay. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Christian McCaffrey one, because I think that's the biggest one in terms of fantasy, because a lot of people, including the analysts who had the number 1 overall pick in our personal league, struggled with knowing which one to go with. And it's a concern because at quarterback, you can kind of get away with it. Dak had a similar calf strain in 2021 that he was an MVP candidate. And once that calf strain hit, he was completely immobilized in the pocket, per Hunter's analysis. And that, I can kind of recognize that too. And, it's a lot easier on a quarterback who doesn't have to barrel through linebackers and defensive tackles 25, 30 times a game. So if I were the 49ers, I'd play it safe. That way it helps fantasy managers out. So I agree 100%, to be cautious going forward and stow away that perfect handcuff running back that you have on your personal rankings chart before the fantasy draft.
Well, it's going to be similar to the Nick Chubb thing. Like, you're going to have Jerome Ford just putting up numbers, then Nick Chubb's going to come back and hopefully not get injured again. But if he does, you've got a dude that is really good at running back.
Exactly. It's a lot like Zach Moss behind Jonathan Taylor last year as well.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, that wraps up, I believe, our injury breakdown, correct?
Yes. We'll get to the DB list later.
I was going to say, dude, I was going to put it. I was like, dude, you got to continue with the DB list. That was a hit last year for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me. All right. Let's go down to the statistical analysis. And Ryan, I'll leave it up to you, brother.
All right. Well, usually this is going to include stats from games from week 1 or what I think is going to happen in week 2, stuff like that. But since we're just starting the season, I thought I'd come on here and make some predictions on what I think is going to happen in the stat world throughout the NFL this year. So we're going to start off with, I even included some defense on this. You don't want to forget the defense, but for the start, we're going to go with most passing yards. And this one I think is pretty interesting. I mean, this is what a lot of people pay attention to. I think they kind of judge their quarterback based off of passing yards. I think there's more to it than that, and the stats will show, because last year I was thinking about this on the long card ride home from my deer lease, and I was like, man, if I got to think who's going to be number 1 this year, I think it's going to be Tua. And then so I was sitting there, I was like, he didn't lead last year or whatever. And I went and looked last year, Tua led the league in NFL passing yards. And I was like, oh shit, I had no idea. So my prediction this year is Tua. Again, I just think that you go look at how the Dolphins draft went this year and who they continue to pick up. That team is just speed loaded. You got, A-Chain, Mostert, Jalen right now from Tennessee. You got Waddle. Yeah, he's a little bit injured, but I mean, you have Tyreek Hill, the fastest receiver in the NFL. We all know that. So I think Tua has a very good chance, again, with Mike McDaniel at the helm as their head coach, to be the leader in passing yards. I think I thought it was going to be a dark horse pick, and then I went and looked at the stats last year, and I was like, oh, hell, I didn't even know he was up on that list. But
the gut feeling.
Anyway, but I also think Mahomes is going to be right behind him, and I will explain that in one of my later picks. My most rushing yards, I think this one's a little bit interesting.
Yeah.
So last year it was Christian McCaffrey. This year I had 2 running backs on the radar that I was really considering, and I think this is the reason I'm picking Breece Hall. Is I picked Breece Hall to be the rushing yard leader this year. And I think there's 4 running backs you can choose from, but 2 in my mind are the ones that are going to lead it. It's McCaffrey, obviously. Jacob touched on it. Is he going to be healthy? Is it Breece Hall? Is it Jahmyr Gibbs? Or is it Derrick Henry? I think those are the 4 running backs that you're going to see this entire year that are going to be the bell cows. Well, for me, Derrick Henry's out because, 1, I'm not sure he's going to be healthy with just the history of running backs at Baltimore. It's incredible.
That's a good point. Yep.
2, I'd also think that Lamar is going to be vulture of rushing yards for him because, you're going to have defenses that focus on Henry, but you can't forget about Lamar's legs. And then the third one for me was Jahmyr Gibbs. I just don't know if he's going to be utilized the way everybody thinks he is. I think he's going to be the explosive back, but I still think David Montgomery is going to be kind of the fantasy term of vulture of some yardage and maybe some touchdowns. But I think the Jets, on the other hand, they have a really good defense. Everybody thinks with Aaron Rodgers coming back that they're going to try and excuse me, they're going to try and light the field on fire with yards. Yeah. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're going to slow down. You got to remember Aaron Rodgers is 40. They're going to use Breece Hall as a bell cow. And they definitely have, I forget the guy's name, but the guy that they have behind him, everybody's kind of excited about too.
Braylon Allen from Wisconsin.
Yes, that dude's a baller too. So, but I just think Breece Hall's going to capitalize on last year and having a quarterback that's knowledgeable like Aaron Rodgers and has seen a lot of ball, who he's probably going to get the most yardage.
I'll counter that before you move on. Sorry. I'll not counter it, but I want to compliment the Breece Hall one with total yards. I think he's going to be the total scrimmage yard leader because I think he's so dynamic in the passing game that I think Braylon Allen actually ends up being kind of a vulture of some carries. But I definitely agree he's going to be up there in like the top 5 in rushing. But I think his passing attack is ridiculous. So I 1000% agree with that take. But I feel like total scrimmage yards, Breece Hall is going to be the number 1 back this year in the NFL.
Yeah, I think he easily gets 1,000 yards this year, maybe 1,200.
No doubt.
Most receiving yards last year, Tyreek Hill. I already went over their offense last year. But this year, I think it's going to be the battle of the NFC wideouts is what I call it. And I think CeeDee Lamb wins. Last year, CeeDee Lamb finished 50 yards behind Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill doesn't have CeeDee Lamb doesn't have anybody there that's going to challenge him. There's nobody on the Cowboys roster. We all know it. They didn't go out and they get a receiver. They didn't do anything to make the receivers better. You still have Brandon Cooks there. He's kind of past his prime, but Jake Ferguson's going to, I think, capitalize on this year. But CeeDee Lamb is going to get the ball 1,000 times. And I think the guy that that fills in behind him at number 2 this year is going to be A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown and a Kellen Moore offense, we have our complaints about Kellen Moore. They've said it on this podcast. We can't stand him. That is true, but he does run a good offense. And we've seen that with Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup that 1 year, Amari Cooper for years, CeeDee Lamb in some cases. But, I just think that A.J. Brown's going to get the ball fed to him like crazy. Yeah. And I think who finishes 3rd in that is Amon-Ra. I think Amon-Ra is going to have another fantastic year. I sit next to a guy at work I've mentioned before. He's a big Lions fan. But the thing about the Lions is everybody looks at them as a run offense, but Jared Goff finished 2nd last year in NFL passing yards. What's going to stop Amon-Ra this year is maybe Jameson Williams or maybe Sam Laporta, but I think Amon-Ra is just too good to not be up on this list. And if you go look at his past 3 seasons, they're eerily similar. Very similar to CeeDee Lamb. And then 4th on that list, I think is Jamar Chase. If Jamar Chase stays healthy, I think he has this. I think he has
year of his rookie year, whatever.
Yeah, I think he balls out. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on those?
Yeah, quickly, I like the CeeDee Lamb one as well. A lot of times they're like, "Oh, if he was number 1 last year, he's not going to finish number 1 this year." But the one that's intriguing to me that I think has really good structure behind it is AJ Brown, because like you mentioned, we had Kellen Moore in Dallas, who had a great receiving core. It's a very similar receiving core now in Philadelphia, and he runs a video game type offense where it's like, I don't care what the score is. Who cares about clock management? We're going to light up the scoreboard. And who else to do it than with AJ Brown? So I think, he's the close to a 1,500-yard receiver this year. He kind of trailed back in fantasy drafts to around that 8, 9, 10 category. But, a couple of those other teams, we're not even discounting them as like, oh, they're not going to do well, but there's just mouths to feed. Bears with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. There's too many, and Roman Dunze.
Stroud on the Texans.
All the Texans receivers. Puka and Cooper. Like, pick your poison. Who stays healthy more? Yeah. I think it's just going to be like a scale balancing out throughout the year, but I don't think any of them just absolutely dominate and get a triple crown besides the one you mentioned.
Yeah, the thing about AJ Brown too is Devontae Smith is in the picture, but I just think that AJ Brown fits what Kellen Moore is going to try and do. And now that they have Saquon Barkley in the box, I think they're going to run that like RPO system. They're going to try and do something where Jalen Hurts can move. Yeah. And I think I don't think Jalen Hurts is all that great of a quarterback. Hot take, whatever you want to say. But
right.
The thing is he's going to get the ball to A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown's kind of a diva where it's like, I need the ball. And I think Kellen Moore has dealt with multiple receivers that are like that. So anyway, that's my list for the year. I think that you're going to see, with Jared's point, Amon-Ra, maybe that's the guy that I might think would fall off the list just because he's had some issues either being healthy or the ball goes a different way. But anyway, moving on. Most sacks. TJ Watt, 19 sacks last year. I think he'll be at the top of the list, but I have a dark horse candidate for this. I actually think Will Anderson Jr. has a very good chance of finishing first on that list this year. And the reason for that is the Texans have gone out and also got Danielle Hunter, who I think was tied fifth last year on the sack list. Will Anderson Jr. is going to have, I think, a breakout year for the Texans. And I think you'll see him very high on that list. That might be a shot in the dark, but I feel like, he's got the size and the metrics to be a Micah Parsons 2.0, probably better than Micah. I have my complaints about Micah, but we'll save that for a later podcast, probably when Dallas plays a big game and Micah does nothing, and then he gets on Instagram and has the quarterback explain to everybody how he did nothing. So next up, most interceptions. Last year, Cowboy, Deron Bland. He's hurt for I think 4 to 6 weeks. That's fine. I didn't really expect him to be on this list again. But I do think another Cowboy will, and I do think it's going to be Trayvon Diggs. And the reason I think that is because Mike Zimmer really does a good job of disguising coverages. That's something that Dallas did not do a good job of last year with Dan Quinn, and that's why you saw them get their ass torn up every time they played a good offense. We were really good against bad defenses. We were capitalizing we were really good against bad offenses. We were capitalizing, ball hawking safety plays or ball hawking cornerback plays that were just trying to make plays on the ball. That's how Dan Quinn's offense or defense works, and it's more man related. Mike Zimmer's offense is all about disguising and hiding your players, and I think defense. Defense. I think Diggs is going to thrive in that. But I think another dark horse candidate for this stat is either going to be Christian Gonzalez when he's healthy on the Patriots or Derek Stingley Jr. because of the pass rush I just talked about.
Yeah.
For the Texans.
I agree. I like that.
That's going to wrap up my most yards, passing, whatever. We're going to go into – I'm only going to go over one award, try and keep this short and sweet. Last year, it was Lamar Jackson, which was a ridiculous MVP give. And I just want to throw this stat out real fast. He got 49 first-place votes, and the only one that received a first-place vote was Josh Allen, and he finished fifth on the list. Dak was 2. And I just want to throw this out there for some people that disagree, and I'll end it at this. Dak last year had 4,500 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. He rushed for 242 yards and had 2 touchdowns. Lamar had 3,700 yards, 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 800 yards rushing, and 5 touchdowns. Now, if you do the math on that real fast, granted, Lamar only played one less game, but if you do the math on total yards, total touchdowns, all that, Dak had him by a good mile. I think the only other one that got the vote, Josh Allen, made a lot of sense. And we were having this conversation actually over text is, if you take the player off the field, how much different is the team? And I think all of those guys make a difference.
Yeah.
But I do think, to Jared's point earlier, if you took Josh Allen off the field for the Bills, oh my God, they would be terrible. Or to Jacob's point, CJ Stroud off the Texans, oh my God, I think they probably would have won 4 games last year. So going into this year, I just went ahead and looked at the odds because I was kind of curious to see what the betting market and all of that were thinking. And I want y'all to remember what I said about Mahomes earlier. Mahomes, I think, is going to win MVP this year. And I think he's going to finish pretty high on that passing yard list. And this is the reason why. The completely revamped offense, Rashee Rice, he got in trouble, but they aren't thinking that he's going to get any kind of punishment until next year. They added Xavier Worthy, who is a speed demon, for their second receiver. You still have Pacheco there, and then Kelsey. Kelsey's getting older, but I mean, you saw him in the playoffs be the guy. I just think this is the best core of guys he's had since Hill and Kelsey, and I think that they're going to try and air this bitch out this year with those guys. They're going to give Mahomes the ball, and they're just going to say, you know what, we're going after it. Their defense is good. They can take chances, obviously, with Mahomes. So I don't know if y'all have any other picks for MVP, but that's what I'm thinking.
Well, not for MVP, but just to add, the Marquise Brown.
Yeah, that
is
too.
a receiver for the Chiefs as well. And so you'll end up having Rashid Rice, Marquise Brown, and Xavier Worthy, plus Travis Kelce. So, like, Marquise Brown has been a number one wherever he's been. So you're going to have a 1A, 1B, and then Xavier Brown, and then, also your 1A tight end. So I'm liking that MVP pick with Mahomes. I think it might be, like you said, pretty unanimously at the end of the season if everybody stays healthy. It's probably going to be Mahomes.
Yeah.
I like those picks. I think, the fans have been wanting it to go a different way than quarterback for the past like 2-3 years. I still think it's a quarterback award, but there's a feeling in the back of my head that's like, what if it's a defensive guy? What if it's a guy like TJ Watt? What if it's a guy like Will Anderson, an edge player that gets an MVP award? And it's just like a weird one that nobody expected, because as the betting atmosphere becomes more and more vivid and popular across every network, the more they want to screw you over. And I think Mahomes will have an MVP year. And it's one of those like LeBron James type things where it's like he could probably win it every year, but the committee has to go a different way. So where I think that you guys are completely right that Mahomes, I believe this too, that Mahomes is going to have some 40 touchdown year, less than 10 picks season, with this caliber of an offense and Andy Reid still in the saddle and Taylor Swift behind him in the media. I think that an edge player could come out of nowhere and break the sack record with 23 or 24 and just light up the league, and they go, well, Mahomes is going to win it another time after this, so we got to go with someone else. And I hope that doesn't happen, but I just realize. So maybe I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, the only unfortunate thing about defensive players winning it is like you have to like break like a 15+ year record. It's sack records. You'd have to put up like 28, and then like with Tyreek Hill last year, like he easily could have been mentioned in the top few for MVP, and basically everyone was saying like, oh, if he doesn't get 2,200 yards or more, like he's not winning it. It's like, what?
Yeah.
It's like,
like
that
last year
is not the same without Tyreek.
Yeah, like last year he finished 6th on the list, and last year he had 119, we'll just call it 120 receptions, 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns, and he finished 6th on the list. That's crazy.
I can imagine that's probably like what, 40-ish, pretty close to 40% of like Tua's passes completed. So it's like for him to do that and then like be 6th in MVP is wild.
I think it'd be fun at the end of the year for us.
That was 40% of Tua's yards.
Good Lord.
Sorry, Jared.
I was gonna say I think it'd be fun for us including Hunter, at the end of the year to kind of create our own MVP like we did last year, where we take analytics, injury analysis, and put it all together and say and have a 4-way vote of like who the MVP should be at the end, regardless, because we know the definition of MVP is most valuable player. Like we mentioned, you take certain players off the board from their position in the depth chart, and what kind of team do they become? We've seen the Ravens without Lamar, and Tyler Huntley did a fantastic job for them in his absence. We've seen Dallas without Dak Prescott, and that defense carried Cooper Rush to a couple of wins. We've seen the Bengals without Joe Burrow, and we saw Jake Browning, kind of go 500 with that team and not play that bad. It's about supporting cast. It's about who's most valuable. But if you take Josh Allen or Mahomes away from their team, or hell, Jordan Love or CJ Stroud, I mean, you're going nowhere. So I think, a real in-depth breakdown at the end of the year would be a lot of fun to discuss in terms of MVP.
I think just to wrap that up, I think we all know the MVP trophy is not what it should be.
NFL rigged.
It's just like it also, like, I think the main reason Lamar won this award was because of his team. He had a really, really solid team around him. And I think that also kind of plays a factor in how your team performs throughout the year. So I think that's also part of it. I mean, like, I think as much as I don't like the Texans, I think you could say that CJ Stroud, like Jacob has been saying, probably should have been pretty high on that list, because it's just, I think, but they finished winning 10 games or something like that, 10-6, and they made the wild card. But anyway, that's basically what I have on MVP. But I wasn't going to go through offensive player of the year and all that. That would take forever. But I got two things left. This was very short and sweet. I got the dark horse versus the overrated team before the season starts. And I'll start with the dark horse. I think the overshadowing of a very bad first-round pick has changed how people view this team. But the Falcons, in my mind, are the dark horse team this year. I think that if Kirk Cousins stays healthy, I think people who finally drafted Kyle Pitts are going to finally see Kyle Pitts be the guy. I think they're going to see. Baby. You got Bijan Robinson there that's going to be a animal. And then you have Drake London that I think is going to be good. And people forget that, they were on the running to be a playoff team last year just because that division was so bad. But their quarterback last year didn't even make a roster this year. He got cut. Desmond Ridder got cut this year.
Both of them got cut, right?
Yeah.
Because Ridder and Heineke, I think both got released.
Well, I wouldn't have thought Heineke did. I just know Ridder did. I think Heineke's not a terrible quarterback, like for a backup or something.
Traded, I think.
Traded. That's what it was. But it was for like a 7th round pick in like 2027 or something like that.
Yeah, it was just so the press release didn't say release, or cut. It was like, hey.
If you don't want to count, this team as a dark horse, the other team that I think is going to be in the running for a lot is the Rams. I know dark horse, they made the playoffs. They went pretty far into the playoffs, but they barely got in. I think this year that they could potentially win that division over the Niners if things play out bad for the Niners. Like if McCaffrey struggles with the calf strain, or they can't get Trent Williams on the field, I think that could cause issues for the Niners. But I think that the Rams are kind of back and poised to be in a really good spot. So overrated. Some of you will be shocked by this one, and it might seem like pure hatred from me, but I think the Packers are an overrated football team going into this NFL season.
Oh, wow.
I know that people
Shatter the Script, baby.
Crazy. But think about it this way. They don't have really any receivers. They didn't go and get a crazy receiver. They've got Christian Watson, who could barely stay on the field. Jaden Reed is kind of what everybody's claiming is going to be the wide receiver one. And then Romeo Doubs. I mean, that's nothing to write home about in terms of other NFL receiving cores. And then they went and grabbed Josh Jacobs off the free agent list to play for them. I mean, I think Josh Jacobs is a good running back, don't get me wrong, but I think he's only had one notable year on the Raiders. And then Jordan Love is there. Yes, I know they whooped the Cowboys' ass in the playoffs, but I'm still not convinced he's as good as everybody says he is. And the reason I'm saying that is that he had 8 to 9 good football games last year, and that is all you've ever seen from him. The start of the year, it wasn't anything crazy. They struggled, finally got in a groove. Like, I think they're already kind of crowning him as one of the best QBs in the league. And, I think the way that he's developed and how that's all played out, you got to sit behind Rodgers. I think that's helped him, and I think LaFleur being there has helped him. But I want to see more from the Packers before I can start penciling them in and putting them on, or putting Love on top. If he does it this year, then all power to him.
Yeah.
And, it's like I have the same issue with Stroud too. He had a great rookie season, but they just do that too fast, where it's like, oh, he's top 5. And it's like, okay, well, here's a question I have for Texans fans or people that are going to say that about Stroud. It's like, did you think Dak was a top 5 quarterback in his rookie year? Exactly.
No.
You did.
Yeah.
So you thought he went 13-3, and you've witnessed the 9 years of his career, great winning quarterback, but a lot of people don't view him as a top 10 quarterback, which is fine. But I mean, everybody has their opinion. But that's what I'm talking about like Jordan Love winning the playoffs, won 2 playoff games, and everybody's like, oh, he's top 10 easy. Or Stroud, oh, he's top 10 easy. Stroud, I think, has a more compelling case, but like you got to see more now that people have film on him. There's the such thing as the sophomore slump and all of that. So
yeah,
that's just my case, and it might be controversial, but that's why we're here to shatter that script.
That's what we're here. So. Yeah, I think what you're referring to is the Trojan horse theory, and that is to mention another Trojan coming into the NFL, Caleb Williams, who had a preseason throw that was pretty good, but then the internet did what it does best and threw in a Mike White highlight where he threw the exact same throw. And you're like, dude, I mean, we have to stop salivating over these players who have not even stepped a foot on the field. People forget CJ Stroud had an awful preseason last year. I mean, he did not play well and didn't get a lot of playing time, and people doubted him for a lot of – it's always a different reason. So I think keeping a level head and all this kind of stuff is kind of our responsibility on this platform to be like, well, hold on a second, let's see. Because they did the same crap with Trevor Lawrence after 1 year, and he's kind of struggled, and I get it. There's been some issues. They had the 3-minute video of the near misses. I have high hopes for Trevor Lawrence, but it's becoming more and more common to salivate over these quarterbacks before they've even stepped foot on the playing field or had more than one season and not even made it to the playoffs yet. So we'll see how that pans out. But any closing comments? Do we want to cover any college football, or it's up to you guys? We're kind of
like I told you all, I was working on the Deer Lease this weekend, so I've only watched the A&M game. That was it. So
I mean, it's whatever y'all want to do. I really like college football and whatnot, as well as NFL. If we were going to talk about it, like I mentioned earlier through text, I'm down to do just like your winners. Like I was saying, do like 2 winners, 2 losers, like 2 teams you watch where you're like, oh, they impressed me, and 2 teams you watch, you were like, what the hell?
Yeah, I agree.
I'll tell you what, I'll let y'all take care of that this week because I was doing work and couldn't watch. My stuff's over with, so I'll let you and Jared chop it up, and I'll be seeing everybody on the next week, and I'll get my fill this weekend.
Yeah, sounds good. We're excited for week 1, and this will be another 5 to 10 minutes or whatever, and then we can wrap this puppy up for next week. So appreciate you joining, Ryan, and we'll see you next week.
Later, Ryan.
Later, boy. But all right. So 2 winners, 2 losers from this past week in college football, because we know we have some fans that enjoy that sort of thing. We are over the time limit, but also got to put in the fact I have a 10-minute intro about what we missed. So technically we're right on time. This is just kind of an outlier episode, which we made really good time with the injury and stat analysis as well. But all right, 2 winners and 2 losers from week 1 of college football. And yes, you can include Florida State and Georgia Tech from the first week. I think that one's fair because they've had a lot of headlines with DJ Oluwalegli. So yeah, that one's a nightmare. That's probably going to make my list. But I'll let you go first with your 2 winners, and then I'll follow up with my 2 winners, and then we'll close out with the losers.
Okay, my 2 winners, and one's going to be kind of a cliche pick and whatnot, but good God, the University of Georgia. That, like, what they did, like, you've got to look at them and be like, bro, they went to Clemson. I mean, even Clemson normally has, at least a decent defense and whatnot, and they look bad. And they could end up being really well in the ACC, and end up winning 9 or 10 games or whatever. But it just showed like the top of the SEC is like worlds better than what the top of the ACC just showed.
Yes.
And so my first winner's got to be Georgia. And then a pick that I don't necessarily like to make, but I'm going to, and it's going to be a winner, and it's going to be USC. You know,
Yeah.
they kind of like coming off of Caleb Williams and how bad that defense was and all this stuff, and going to, you know, a quarterback that kind of had to sit out and waited his time and whatever. And I mean, he looked great. Like he made some throws, and their defense, you know, it might have been a little more bend don't breaky, but like if you can see that your offense is rolling like that, like I mean, sometimes that's what you need is just, hey, get us one stop, get us two stops, tops.
Right.
And so I thought they against LSU, and that's where it kind of shows the differences in conferences, you know, because they're joining the Big 20 right now or whatever it is, the Big 18, and showing that like because USC, I was kind of down on this year. I'm like, bro, they're joining the Big 10.
Yeah.
You know, they've got to play in a certain mix. They've got to play a different style of football because outside of Ohio State, what do you think of Big 10? You know, running the football,
Right.
defense, you know,
Power ride.
Yeah, we're scoring 18 points a game and we're winning 18 to freaking 5 or something like that. And
Right.
so, you know, they're having to play a mix of Ohio State, Penn State. I guess you could throw Iowa in there, Minnesota, Nebraska, Michigan. I forgot Michigan
Yeah,
State,
Michigan.
which whatever. They got a big name at least, but like those are historically really good teams and stuff like that. And to see them go to, you know, LSU and really kind of handle that defense and that whatnot, I was impressed by that, especially the quarterback position.
Yeah, I thought I was very intrigued, and I talked about this on a solo episode a couple weeks back about the LSU and USC game, and I thought it was a fantastically even game throughout. That it was just who can keep the ball away from each other the longest. And I thought Newsmeyer for LSU looked really good. He
Yeah.
hit a lot of second level throws, but Miller Moss looked also, you know, the same type of amazing. In terms of making elite throws. And he had a showing last year when Caleb Williams was out for a game or sat a game. I can't remember which one it was, that people started kind of talking about who this quarterback is. And every year Lincoln Riley hits on a quarterback. So
Yeah.
I like those two picks. Ooh! But
what are your winners?
So my winners are, I'll have to go with number 1, Miami. I thought Miami against Florida going into the swamp, and I understand Florida has not been the powerhouse that for a long time, but going into the swamp is not no easy thing. And having the standard that Miami has expected to have over the past, 20 years since they've been the actual U. Going in with Cam Ward, who I had my doubts about. I mean, he's traveled from Incarnate Word to, I believe it was it Western Kentucky or something like that.
You talk about Cam Ward?
Cam Ward, yeah.
Yeah, so he was at Texas State,
I thought he was
Incarnate Word.
Yeah.
Like he went there, Incarnate Word, and then, or vice versa, one of them. He followed the Texas State coach wherever he went, and then went to Washington State.
And
then,
Yeah, so long journey for him to end up at the U. I had my doubts about him, and he was carefree throughout the whole game, very poised, and it might speak to how awful Florida is this year, which it is looking really bad for the state of Florida outside of Miami in terms of football. But that guy, the head coach of Florida, had an absolute meltdown, kind of attacked his own fan base, but Miami made a statement. And being in, which I believe they're in the ACC as well, I think they have a good chance of playing in the conference championship with, a team like Clemson, maybe. But Clemson, I've had some ball knowers in my replies attacking me that they should still be ranked. But what you're expected to do, only putting up 3 against Georgia, it was very disappointing to see. But yeah, so I had Miami as a winner. My second winner was Nebraska. I thought they had a fantastic outing with their Patrick Mahomes lookalike, who, as a rocket of an arm, And they're coming out with a lot of expectations. You know, you can always hear Will Compton talking about it on social media. But there's been a lot. This is another team, a lot like Miami, that was good in the past and hasn't really been the same since for a long time. And maybe with a coach like Matt Rule, who was amazing at Temple and returns to college football, a lot of PR activity going on over there that seems to be filled with good positivity. And a freshman quarterback like Dylan Raiola, you might be set for the next 3 or 4 years to be a contender to play for the conference championship in the Big Ten. So I'm excited to see what Nebraska does. I've always kind of had a soft spot for them for some reason, but it's kind of like the what's it called? I was going to name an NFL team, but it doesn't really matter. The Bills. The Bills. I always had a soft spot for the Bills, but yeah, I'm intrigued to see what Nebraska does.
Absolutely, I like those 2 picks. Didn't think of the Nebraska one, but the Miami one, it was close.
You know what
the Miami one
I almost did was North Dakota State.
Oh, I know, that would have been wild, huh?
Because like I think it speaks volumes for the FCS group, where it's like
Absolutely.
We're forgotten about. No one cares about FCS. Everybody abandoned it to move to the FBS. And North Dakota State, you know, I know Ryan left, but they're a powerhouse. They're the mitochondria of the FCS.
Absolutely.
And shout out to Colorado for putting them on their schedule. That is not an easy task.
No, not at all.
So, shout out to them.
It's not like a Chattanooga or something like that. Like it.
Yeah,
they're good.
Yeah. Shout out FCS boys.
There we go. Oh man, so I guess we gotta get to our losers.
Yes, sir.
And
I already know it's on.
I don't want to do it, bro. I'll do them as I'm trying not to go with like the full on like obvious ones. But okay, one I'm gonna throw out there that's not obvious is Texas Tech. Okay. Texas Tech went into freaking overtime with Abilene Christian. And no offense to my boys over at Abilene Christian in the Bible Belt over there. Okay. Like, props to them putting up 51. Yeah. But I don't know if this is like, and I'm kind of torn is like Texas Tech back, because that's how Texas Tech won. They used to just score more points than you. I remember when I was at SFA in grad school and worked with football, when like some of the football players would come back, because you know the smaller FCS teams and stuff like that, you know, they go play their money game, right? And we would always either do TCU or Texas Tech. And this, I believe, was when Patrick Mahomes was there, one of his years. And they would come back, and I'd be like, "So how is it like playing them?" And they would say, like, "Dude, they don't. It feels like they don't actually run plays. Like all their receivers are 5'8" to 6 foot at max.
Yeah,
and they all run 4.3s, and it looks like they say hut, and then they just run in different directions.
Yes,
and so like." Is Texas Tech back? Is that how they're going to win games now? Scoring 52 points.
Good Lord.
But doing that, to having that done to you by Abilene Christian, that's tough.
Yeah,
that's tough. And then my second one, okay, I'm not going to do the obvious one, but I'm going to go with Iowa. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to look at that score, and you're going to see. Well, I think it was like 40-0. Yeah, 40-0 against Illinois State. Shout out Redbirds, baby. What people don't realize about that score is it was 6-0 at halftime.
Yeah.
6-0. Okay. And it ended up, I mean, at the end of the third quarter, it was still only 19-0. So, like, yes, you could be like, oh, yeah, they beat the shit out of them 40-0. But if you watch that and looked at that score line, 6-0, Iowa playing Illinois State, like, brother, come on. That's bad. And especially after the last year where they led the NCAA in punts and punt yards. Like, that's not good.
Efficient special teams.
Yeah, so that's not good. And so those are my 2 losers are Texas Tech, wreck 'em, and then, you know, freaking Iowa, go Hawks or whatever. And they're ranked 25. Like, it's insane to me that, like, they can have a top 3 defense in the league and then have like 140th of offense, and you're like, yeah, that evens out 25. Like, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, no. Yeah, the point differential for Iowa has to be god awful at the end of the year because they put somebody like my dad out there at quarterback every year, and he knees are buckled, can't really
Yeah.
move. It's like, I mean, he's a field general, but he can't throw a
Yeah.
second level throw.
Listen, we're all
Yeah.
about body positivity on this podcast, but brother looks like he leans a little bit further into the beer and tacos
Taco
section.
greasy.
Yeah, instead of the like chicken breast, rice, and broccoli and protein shakes section, which props to him. He's still D1, but like your coach came out in like this fall camp and was like,
They addressed it.
yeah, like, yeah, we're addressing that. It's like, sure. Okay.
Bro.
Like, sure.
Excuse me. Bro thought he was going to Taco Bell, ended up going to Taco Belly. So
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah,
it's bad for him.
And Taco Bell ended up at Fresh. Like, like, what are we doing? What's all this green stuff in this taco? It's like, that's called lettuce, brother.
Like, that's called
so
non-meat.
Yeah.
Non-grease.
Yeah.
So I like those two. My two losers, I'm actually going to choose two ranked opponents. And I have to say the first one is Michigan. I know I understood they beat him 30-10 or whatever, but Donovan Mitchell for the first half struggled tremendously. And I think that's bad news bears for a team that just got rid of JJ McCarthy, who they had their complaints, or the fans had their complaints about in college, didn't throw enough. And I know he looks good in the NFL, and I hope he does well, but I'm saying, who's going to be the guy to step up, because that running game is not going to work. Then in the Big Ten, you're going to play a lot of talent to where you're going to have to throw the football, and you can't ride on Donovan Edwards all the way through. They're going to have a tough schedule next week. I'm like I mentioned in my picks, and I promised I'd get to it here. So here we are. Like, I think Texas is going to rout them. It's a low scoring game, but I think Texas will look miles better than Michigan in this game in Michigan Stadium. And I think a guy like Quinn Ewers going in there with Isaiah Bond, and I think that defense is going to show up for Texas. And I just think they're more ready than Michigan, who has a new coach. Harbaugh's kind of gone. I think this is the rebirth of when Harbaugh first joined Michigan. You got to have to start that multi-year process of, can we get to the national championship? Michigan will be back, but I don't think it's this year. So I think they're a loser in the first week.
Losers.
Loser. But my second one is LSU, because I think Brian Kelly's on the hot seat already. And, I thought it was funny because I saw a couple of people mention this, that, last year he blamed it. It's almost like golf. You want to blame everything on everything except yourself in golf. It's like, you talked my backswing. These are brand new clubs. Oh, well, that wind kind of picked up when I swung, type thing. And that's Brian Kelly in terms of excuses at coach. Yeah. And that was all last year. And I think he thought that it was like, oh, so this is Coach O's recruiting program, so I'm going to blame it on this team, but you're the coach of the team. And I kind of stealing that from, I believe part of my take made that point. But, I think it's warranted. And, his social media PR was a bit goofy his first year.
Oh, absolutely.
And they lose the opener last year. They lose the opener this year. I thought LSU was going to come out because, if Brian Kelly needs to understand the history of that game. LSU should have came out and took it personal, and they didn't. And you saw Brian Kelly after the game, slam the table, and it seemed fake to me. And
I'm like, just so gosh darn angry.
I'm just so flipping angry at this team.
Shut up, boy. Like, bro, you need to start cussing in these things for anybody gonna take you serious. Like, you're in a boot. Like, nobody says I'm so angry. I can't say on this podcast what they really say, but like, no way they're just slamming a desk like that. People, his whole team just looked. They probably put that on the big screen in there and be like, "Hey, look at this guy."
Right?
He's so angry. It's like, shut up, dude.
I was like, "Ooh, big bad angry. What's Brian Kelly gonna do?" But if Coach O got angry or Saban got angry, you knew it and you heard it, and it was like a whoa. Like,
Yeah.
can he do this? Is he going to get fined for this? And I thought the team played well, but again, at the end, they just kind of fell apart and blew it. And that always reflects on coaching. You got to be able to it's about execution, but you coach execution in practice. So, as a former college football coach, but yeah, that is the reality of things looking from the outside in.
And I think we can rank our diamonds of losers this week, because I know you thought we were just gonna skim by it, right?
And it's on the bottom
So obviously Florida State is one, right?
Yes, Florida State.
That's awful, dude. That's
the obvious.
Like DJU is gonna get benched. He has to, and it sucks for him and the coach and whatnot. But like, yes, there were some drops, but there were some throws. You're just like, dog. Like what you got to make those. And then obviously we don't have to talk about that game anymore, because we're probably going to go in enough on this one. But the A&M showing, and specifically the offense. And I will say this from like, and I'll what do you say? Put it on blood. Like, I picked Connor Weigman, or however you say his name. Like, I was in the text that I was telling y'all earlier, that like my boss does a pick'em league, and they had a pick for top 4 or 5 Heisman's picks. And I told him, I said, hey, don't be afraid to put him in there. Like I told him, like, put him at 4. I was like, because your normal ones are going to be your Milrow, your whatevers and stuff like that. I was like, but if Weigman, like what he showed last year before he got hurt, like he's a dog. Yeah. And dude, they looked bad.
Yeah,
like
they did. It was bad.
He said it wasn't nerves. He said it wasn't that. Dude, it looked like it. Like it it just did not look good. They couldn't get anything going. And like Hunter or one of y'all were saying, like, now everybody's talking about like how Notre Dame's defense is like elite.
Yes.
And my argument back to that, agree. Was that, yes, look at the schedule Notre Dame plays. They play 4 games a year against good teams.
Right.
And they may do all right against them. And then they play 4, 5, 6 games against God knows who. And so it's real easy when half your games you're giving up, 0 to 10 points. And so it's like, don't do that. They just played bad. I still think they're going to be all right. Yeah. I think it would have been a good idea maybe to like schedule like Middle Tennessee game 1 with the quarterback that hasn't played in
or
a while.
McNeese, who would have played this week.
Yeah. Maybe you've done that to get the nerves out.
Yeah.
But I think he'll still do fine. But just how much I had heard, because my boss is a massive Aggie fan, how much I've heard about like the offense, the line's healthy, quarterback's good, y'all got the weapons and everything. And to kind of drop a stinker like that, I was like, guys, that's
come on,
that's bad.
Yeah, those are all fantastic points. I went to the game. I had a bet on the over for his passing yards because I was like, yeah, he's at home. He's going to come out here. I think he's in the first drive looks solid. And I get into it, and Kirk Herbstreit starts going in about how great this secondary is for Notre Dame. And I was like, what? Wait, hold on. They have they have the best talent, the most talented secondary in college football. This is Notre Dame we're talking about, and this is your one chance, because everybody always says Notre Dame plays nobody. They're overrated, and so you come into one of the most hot environments in college football early in the year, to where the weather favors the Southern players, and you put up an offensive, like you mentioned, stinker like that. It's embarrassing. And it's why A&M fans and their program is looked down upon in the SEC these days, because you can't beat who you're supposed to beat. The only quarterback since Manziel that has been able to semi-accomplish this while also being ass is Kellen Mond, who I had Aggies while I was attending the school preach to me about how he's really good. And I'm like, he's a hot pack of ass. He's just the best we have.
He is athletic.
He's athletic, but I mean, we lost far better quarterbacks than him in the transfer portal and in recruiting, such as Kyler Murray. And props to Kyler Murray for going to the Big 12. But yeah, it's back to this game. Weidman, we've only seen 5 total games from him, and in 4 of them has looked solid.
Yeah.
And you get one opportunity to beat the overrated team opening night, College Game Day. Not a lot of pressure, honestly. I mean, sure, it's a night game. I guess there is a little bit, but at home to put up that kind of a stinker with a new offensive coordinator that I still have high hopes for, Colin Klein out of Kansas State. Dude, I mean, I saw the film analysis from the linebackers at Notre Dame. They're blowing up our kick blockers. I mean, just grown man football. And to A&M's credit, their defensive line, as I predicted, played outstanding. I thought they were great. And what happened? You go in here, A&M's getting hurt all over the place. Every 7 or 8 plays, another offensive lineman's down. Another guy's down. I'm like, dude, I mean, we should be the ones toughening this game out. So Elko, is off to a slow start. Offensive production wise, I think the defense lived up to the height. But there is good news amongst Aggie fans, such as myself, is that you have the next 4 games to really get in the rhythm before you play Missouri. You play McNeese, you play Florida, you play another FCS school, and then you go into play Arkansas at home instead of at a neutral site, which is always a fun game to watch, but they're not one of the more talented SEC schools currently.
Correct.
They could be a sleeper. I don't know. You know more about Arkansas than I do.
Let's just say they look extremely athletic.
Okay, there we go. So it might be an exciting game, but you still have 4 games to kind of go, let's gather ourselves before we go play a top 10 opponent in Missouri. So get your heading, be a leader, get vocal in the locker room, and let's go. But all jokes. But I think it'll be interesting to see how he progresses. I still have confidence in him. So we'll see. But bad first week.
Yeah. And then the segment everybody waits for is the DB list.
The DB list.
Okay. The
For
DB list.
For new time comers, the DB list is the down bad list. This is
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I think the DB list has got to be the head coach from Florida in his post-game presser just getting dummied by that water bottle. I don't know if you saw that, but he's frustrated. It's like one of those days where it's just everything's kind of going against you. You drop your water when you're filling up at the fridge. Your backpack comes unzipped. Your wallet falls out of your pocket and all of it falls on the floor. You ain't even made it out the house yet, right? And then when you're almost out the house, your belt loop catches on the door handle and you're like, God, please.
It's open.
Please. And it was just like that. That dude was sitting there just angry. His team stinks. He already knows the schedule that's ahead of him. And he just got an Aquafina water bottle and just
can't get it open.
He's having to talk to these people that he can't probably stand right now. And I mean, it's just doing a number on him. He's probably it looked like somebody trying to open a pop top beer. He thinks it's a twist off and he's just ripping his hand to shreds trying to get it. It was just this guy's on a DB list. He just got a bad.
He got to be in there. He got to be in there.
Yeah. Do you have any DB list candidates outside of A&M?
I was going to say outside of Connor Weigman, I'd have to think on it. Let me see. Brian Kelly's a good one, I think, as well because of his tantrum that he had on live television in a post-game press conference. I think that's a big one. But honestly, I'm going to go a different route. I'm going to go with, and this is controversial, whether you like it or not. It's Dylan Raiola. I think him copying Mahomes' look, it's on purpose, and it's I'm not a fan of it, to be honest. I mean, you got the exact same look as Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
The exact same. I mean, you walk out there with the haircut, and everybody's like, oh, look, it's Patrick Mahomes lookalike. Dude, you got to play like him if you dress like him. I mean, This is you're 7 years old in the front yard throwing the football to yourself, and you're wearing a long sleeve that I got on, but you cut off the other side halfway, and you're like, look, I'm Mahomes, and it's my imagination or whatever. you got to play like him. You got to dress like him. And granted, he had a great first game, but you got to keep that up, bro. Like,
Yeah.
that ain't gonna be no easy challenge walking around with that nice little bald fade perm you got going on in the Oakley Radars. Like,
oh yeah, it's like in college playing the guy with like the turquoise blue like glove. And it's like, brother, you better throw gas.
yes.
I was like, are you gonna get chirped the whole game?
No doubt. And he's got the Oakley Radars on, but it's like, bro, you're the Shady Rays of the Oakleys. Like,
yeah,
you're the off-brand Oakley currently. You gotta win 3 Super Bowls, 2 MVPs to be Mahomes, because Mahomes was not Mahomes in college.
Yeah, you're the Cayman Jacks of the radar, the gas station pickups.
Yeah, you're the gas station sushi of Payway. Name your favorite Chinese spot, but I think he's going to do well. But I just the look is the DB list for me. You're like,
yeah,
come on, like walking out the bus like your shit don't stink. It's like, well, I've smelled a lot of people fart, and that shit always stinks. So
yeah,
do without what you will. That's my DB list. All right, this great episode. Honestly, I college football. I want to cover as much as we can. Honestly, in a Shatter the Script subject like this, I'm sure Ryan will be here on the next one. He was out of commission throughout the weekend for that. But covering this is, I'm more hyped for college football than I am NFL this year, mainly because I have no expectations for our Cowboys. But just going in here, there's the new 12-team playoff. I'm super excited for it. So definitely want to cover more of this throughout the season.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot of players out there that could get in now that Saban's gone. So, yeah, a lot to discuss. So, all right. This has been the Stats and Scars episode, week 1. Catch the first 30-ish minutes for this injury and stat analysis, and you can catch us at the end for some college football type stuff. But, yeah, every Thursday, 8 a.m., this episode would be released. You can follow us on Instagram at sts.pod or on Twitter at sts_pod. And you can find us on all platforms. We'll be releasing throughout the week. We'll have an actual Shatter the Script episode this Sunday without the audio jacking up. So it'll be good. But all right, appreciate you being here. Great episode. We'll be back next week. Shatter the Script on Sunday. So appreciate y'all. Y'all have a good one.